This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, Dallas and progressive moral idiocy. It is an honor and a privilege to have with us tonight Dr. Bruce Thornton, a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Dr. Thornton, welcome back to the Glazov Gang.
Thank you, Jamie.
We are very honored at Front Page Magazine to be running your articles, your recent one, Dallas and Progressive Moral Idiocy. And, you talk about Dallas and everything surrounding that tragedy. And you show that black lives don't really matter to the left, while the left is pretending that they matter so much. Let's start with that.
Correct. The logic that we're seeing, and we have been now for decades, is the logic of grievance politics. That is, a group that feels itself to have been persecuted and has been in the past, starts a movement that seeks redress. And the movement becomes successful. The Civil Rights Act of 1965 was a success. Problems still remained, obviously, but we have come in the last 50 years immense distances in race relations in this country. The problem is grievance politics, being founded on grievance, cannot say there are no more grievances. So what happens? You can turn into grievances, slights, insults, various slings and arrows that you encounter in social life and magnify them into grievances, hence microaggressions, hence the policing of language. You can invent new ways to talk about the grievance. So the old racism that says all people of a group are inferior and they are persecuted. Think of Jim Crow, think of lynching, think of the poll taxes, etc. The whole Jim Crow apparatus. Once that stops, then you redefine racism, and we hear things like institutional racism. And you say, well, we don't have the lynchings, we don't have the night riders, we don't have the crosses to burn, and the Ku Klux Klan is a crank fringe phenomenon now. The racism is in our institutions, and so statistical disparities then become evidence. Disparate impact is the language that is used, and that the Obama DOJ has been flogging now. And here now we get to Black Lives Matter. You invent grievances out of whole cloth. And the invented grievance, of course, is that racist police have declared a war on black males and are gunning them down in the streets. And we know that that is a lie. It's statistically not true. The number of unarmed black men not resisting arrest, and that's an important distinction to make, is slight. And it is particularly slight, and here's where the Black Lives Really Don't Matter come in. It's a particular egregious misrepresentation because we all know the devastating impact of black-on-black crime all across America. Mm-hmm. Over 5,500 in, I believe, 2015. 5,500 dead black lives that don't really matter. Mm-hmm. And that is, as I pointed out in the article, that is more than all of the black people lynched, murdered since Reconstruction in this country.
Dr. Thornton, let me ask you this, because I want to get to that of why those black lives don't matter to the Black Lives Matter movement. But let's just crystallize this for a second. The Black Lives Matter movement is a movement that is based on a lie.
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. And anybody can go on to the internet, I don't care if you go to the FBI, you go to the DOJ statistics of crime and what actually is the biggest threat to a black life in this country. And it is not a policeman.
And I just want to say, just summarize some of these very powerful facts that you have mentioned and that are also in your recent article at Front Page Magazine, Dallas and Progressive Moral Idiocy. You write that there isn't an epidemic of racist police killings of unarmed blacks. It just doesn't exist. More blacks than whites are killed relative to their population, but that's a consequence of blacks being a much larger proportion of violent criminals. Can you talk about?
Right. Well, the number of contacts of police and blacks is, well, depending on how you count, what crimes you count, etc., it's almost 50%. So if you're going to have that many contacts between black criminals and police, of course you're going to have a greater incidence of those kinds of encounters.
Yeah.
So that's the disparate impact that doesn't take into account the simple fact that if you have that many blacks committing crimes, of course they're going to have contacts with police much greater than the white population, and the possibility of that kind of killing, whether justified because the person was resisting arrest, which is most of them, by the way, or the officer felt his life was in danger. And then there will be, on occasion, and we've seen police, for whatever reason, panic, bad training, don't like black people, perhaps. Yes, you will get that. But that's a consequence of the number of crimes committed by blacks that lead them to contact with police.
Okay, and now we might be a little bit, I might be a little bit repetitive here in terms of what you're saying, but also I just want to highlight these facts that you also bring up in your article, because the media never touches on this. The leftist narrative, the Obama narrative never touches on this. You write that whites and Hispanics are 3 times more likely to die at the hands of police than are blacks. And minority police officers are 3 times more likely to fire their weapons than other police officers. So we never hear about this. Can you just touch on that for a second?
Well, because as I said at the beginning, the whole point of this outcry is to serve grievance politics. Grievance politics is the mechanism for activists, for politicians, whatever, to gain social and political leverage, if not money, to put it bluntly. And I'm talking about people like Al Sharpton. So that's the purpose of this selective attention given to what is basically a made-up problem of police killing blacks. So you leave out any fact that disturbs that narrative. The narrative has to be melodramatic. That is, there has to be good and there has to be evil. You can't have what progressives always say they love, nuance. You can't have nuance in which we see in some of these facts that you just brought up. It disturbs the narrative.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the media, the mainstream media, the Deadwood media, they are complicit in this narrative. But that's a whole nother story. Stupid white people.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Look, before I want to get to some of your interpretations, another statistic you bring up, a police officer is much more likely, 2.5 times more likely, to be killed by a black than he is to kill a black American.
Exactly.
And this is never discussed. Can you talk about that for a second?
No, none of these facts that we've been discussing, and lots of people are discussing it, of course, they don't suit the narrative. And the narrative has to be very simple. It has to be in the tradition of Jim Crow and slavery. It has to summon up the historical crime of white people against blacks. So it has to be good guys and bad guys. Bad guys are cops. Good guys are blacks. If you start talking about black crime, then the blacks aren't the good guys so much. If they're killing 5,500 blacks in a year. So you simply leave that information out. And you hone the narrative to zoom in on these very photogenic, telegenic, very emotionally wrenching sorts of scenes that we see every time there's one of these killings. And we've seen in the past, once all the facts come in, then, of course, the narrative changes. And this happened in Ferguson, where even Obama's DOJ had to, in the face of the evidence, including witness statements by black people who were there, that this was a justified shooting. However, we still see the totally mendacious hands up, don't shoot, completely divorced from reality. And this, by the way, as we know, this is the modus operandi of totalitarian-minded people everywhere. You change the history, you invent the history, you shape the history of the ideology.
So absolutely. So Dr. Thornton, before we go, let's crystallize this then. When something, whatever it is that happens with a white police officer, whatever it is that goes down, and a black American gets killed, no matter who's guilty or innocent, we're definitely going to see protests.
Absolutely.
But so many killings, so many shootings, black on black crime. We don't see any BLM demonstrations. We don't see Obama talking. We don't see Sharpton talking. What is this indifference on the left, this callous indifference to black people when they're killed by other blacks?
Well, it's as we've said, it's not useful, let's say. It's not useful because then it forces them to look at what the entitlement state has done to the black family, black character. And again, we're talking about not all and every single black person in America. We're talking about a subset. And this has all been driven by Democrats, liberals, and now progressives. They bear the responsibility for creating these plantations. And so that's the last thing in the world they want to talk about, because that just isn't about black lives. That then becomes a conversation about the entitlement state, the welfare state, the transfers and redistribution of wealth that destroys accountability, destroys virtue, destroys the family. And this is what we get when you do that. And they do not want that conversation.
Yeah, and it's all about their political power, and human
Absolutely.
beings can be sacrificed on the altar of leftist political power. Just under a minute, conclude for us why you use specifically the term moral idiocy.
Well, because morality involves a certain kind of intelligence. It's the ability to make distinctions. It's the ability to take a principle and apply it across the board rather than apply it selectively. And the failure to do that is a kind of idiocy. It's a kind of stupidity. And people who can be brilliant, and many are still moral idiots because they can't make those kinds of distinctions that a true morality requires. A true morality is not, I apply it when I want to or it suits me, and then I don't apply it when it doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
It has to be applied all the time.
When you think about people like Obama and Hillary, what are some words and labels that come to your mind?
Well, they are pursuing. I think we have to distinguish between Obama and Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I don't know what Obama's motivations are. Having spent 40 years in the university, I can tell you that there are thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands of people exactly like him, of all races, sexes, who would have governed exactly the way he did because he is fulfilling the old progressive new left agenda. Hillary seems to me, just judging on her 25 years in public life, is a money grubber. She feels she's entitled. She likes power. She likes the perks. She likes the money. That's why she wants to be president. And Obama's more of a mystery. I know a lot of our viewers will probably want to say, you know, he's a secret Muslim. But that may be the case. All I can say is what I observed from his behavior and how it is so consistent with what I've seen for 40 years in the university.
Our time is up, Dr. Bruce Thornton. What an honor to have you on the Glazov Gang.
Honor to be here, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for everything that you do and for your courage and nobility in telling the truth in these very frightening times.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining the Glazov Gang. Please remember, we're a fan-generated show. Go to jamieglazov.com to support the show, and make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Glazov Gang. We'll see you on our next edition. Good night.